Hi everybody, Russ and My Hammers 11. Hope you are all safe and well. If you're new to the channel, please subscribing, hitting the bell icon so you made a time I put new content on. As always, like to thank our lovely channel sponsors, Untuck It. Check about the description below. Happy Father's Day, everybody. Happy Father's Day. So I thought, what better gift than to give you another episode of Hammers in Hot Water. I've got to get a better name for that, but we'll keep it Hammers in Hot Water. We've had Savio, we've had Marco Boogers, and now we're going to be talking about one man. This man, Dani. So obviously it's Euro season at the moment, and Cristiano Ronaldo is emblazed everywhere, whether he's ripping off Coca-Cola wrappers and sending everyone to drink water or whatever. And he's been in that position for a long time. But back in 1996, we had our own Portuguese superstar. This man, the man himself stepped forward. Daniel de la Cruz Carvalho, or just Dani to us. So Harry was basically, to give you a bit of context, Harry was assembling this sort of Nations League of players, it seems, at West Ham. We had Bilic, we had Reaper, we had Ludo, we had Lazaridis, we had Slater, we had Harks, we had Dimitrescu, we had all these players. And we had another player to add to this ranks of these different nations. And in fact, our first ever Portuguese player to wear the claret and blue, and that was Mr. Dani, or Dani. I'll interchange as I'm going through. Now, at just 19 years old, he'd already made his debut for Sporting Lisbon 2 years beforehand in a team which included Luis Figo at the time. And prior to joining the Hammers, he actually had also just received his first cap for Portugal, playing against England at Wembley. And with sort of this increased sort of notoriety, having broken into the national side, Dani wanted more game time, something which I think's basically played his career. He wanted everything now. He didn't want to wait or work for anything. The manager of Sporting Lisbon at the time, Carlos Queiroz, obviously then went to Man United to, coach Cristiano Ronaldo, for example. He'd basically grown tired of this desire of Dani wanting to find all this playing time, basically. And ironically, it was actually at that game, that 1-1 game, that Redknapp was watching Dani and basically convinced the board to sign Dani, put all the stops initially on loan, but with a view to a permanent transfer. And unlike many transfers then and now, the press never got wind of it. All negotiations are basically gone behind closed doors, behind the scenes. There was no leaks, which was really unusual for the time, and obviously for now, for example. But it was felt that the Hammers, for us to pull off this coup, it was a coup, we needed to be secretive. If any other team had heard of these negotiations taking place, they may well have jumped in. And basically, the club had hoped that Dani would bring a new type of supporter into the club. I mean, the man was a professional model, and so that would naturally bring in more commercial opportunities. And in fact, I remember seeing, when Dani had signed, definitely more female fans at the ground. And actually, I remember, because obviously the program used to have a centerfold, used to have a poster, and I remember seeing pictures of Dani, in that sort of one of the programs, stuck up around the corrugated sort of surroundings at Upton Park with chewing gum or whatever. I distinctly remember that. It was really, really. I can close my eyes and just see it. Particularly, it was on the North Bank. It was on the North Lower, definitely. It was corrugated between the North and the West Stand. I remember seeing posters there and around the backs as well. And what was quite funny was Dani. He was he's a beautiful man, a model. He was complete contrast to his striking partner, Ian Dowie, who the tabloids quickly sort of nicknamed the pair Beauty and the Beast. Which was exactly what the club wanted, and to have this sort of notoriety, get the sort of this idea of this beautiful man who plays for us. And indeed, Redknapp himself was somewhat taken back by his beauty, and so was Sandra, by the sounds of it. I mean, he says, my missus fancies him, even I don't know whether to play him or to F him. Thank you, Harry. I'll just abbreviate that to make it family friendly. And indeed, it was working. The signing of Dani was bringing in rewards. The club had anticipated. It was high ticket sales, commercial and media opportunities. Inquiries had increased. However, we needed some substance to this. It was great the interest, but if he wasn't going to deliver on the pitch, then he wouldn't have delivered. It wouldn't prolong this sort of new wave. And so Dani's debut, tough one. It was against our bitter rivals, Tottenham Hotspur, at their backyard at 3 Point Lane. Some introduction for a young lad, particularly thrown into the lion's den, literally. But it worked perfectly for Redknapp. It was also on Monday Night Football as well. So it wasn't just the attending crowd watching him, but obviously millions at home. And Dani scored the winner, heading the ball past Ian Walker in a 1-0 victory. He was on the back of every newspaper the next day. The experiment had seemingly worked in terms of West Ham. However, hence why he's on this show, Dani's career would prove to be almost as short-lived as previous hammerers in hot water. Subject, Marco Boogers. Similar to Boogers, Dani hated training. And his teammates were becoming really frustrated at the lack of effort he put into sessions, always trying to find an excuse to not attend. And this sort of coincided with the emergence of people like Rio and Frank Jr., who were both much harder working in training than Dani. So there was this sort of them and us attitude in terms of how they would train. And so this got the wind up a lot of players in terms of his reluctance to train. I mean, Dani still scored another goal against Man City away. I think it's Man City away, might be Man City home, several weeks afterwards. But a mid-season trip to Spain pretty much sealed Dani's fate. So he'd basically been given permission to leave the team hotel one afternoon, but he hadn't reported back for training the following morning, and no one knew where he was. Redknapp comments about this, saying, come 1:30 p.m., that is, there was no sign of him. We were relaxing by the pool, and suddenly there's this tanned figure walking towards us, hair immaculate, sunglasses on, ever inch the film star. He couldn't, or rather wouldn't, give me any explanation. All the lads knew he'd picked up a bird, maybe even 2 or 3, lucky devil. But there was no way he was telling me. And that was the trouble with Dani. He loved the limelight more than the hard work. Back in Blighty, another missed training session at home, coinciding with tabloid pictures of him in a nightclub the previous evening, was basically the final straw. They placed him in the stiffs before his contract was cancelled by the club. Dani had literally gone from hero to zero in a couple of months. He'd only made 9 appearances for the club in its whole entirety. But then, that's where sort of the story of Dani at West Ham finishes, but it carries on. I mean, despite his fall from grace, his apparent fall from grace in the national press, he was still picked to represent Portugal in the Atlanta Summer Games. They lost in the bronze medal game quite convincingly to Brazil, and he was in that squad with Nuno Gomez and soon to be hammer Hugo Porfirio, the man who never saw snow until Wrexham away. And those performances at the Olympics led Johan Cruyff to recommend him to Ajax. And he signed for Ajax in the beginning of the 96-97 season. He was actually given Johan Cruyff's number 14, which is an iconic number for Ajax fans in the same way that number 6 is iconic for us. Again, he had a spectacular start to his career at Ajax, and then he basically quickly faded and never came close to the billing that he'd come with. He was at Ajax for 4 years, made 72 appearances. It became apparent to looking through it that basically Dani, it wasn't about the football, it was about the fame and adulation that brought it. So he was falling out of loving football. That's the way I saw it. I mean, he then had a quick 5-game spell with Jose Mourinho's Benfica before basically that fell apart and Atletico Madrid came calling. Atletico were in the second division, and Dani lined up against with Fernando Torres, who was that was his first stint at the club. They gained promotion to the Liga in Dani's second season, Atletico, and then the end of the following season, Dani hung up his boots and retired at the age of 27. Not through injury or fatigue, but he just fell out of love of football, fell out of love of game. He loved the adulation more that football gave him, but didn't want to put the hard work in and dedication it needed to succeed in order to get the adulation. So it was sort of a double-edged sword. He liked the fame, but he didn't want to work for it. That's the way I've seen the whole Dani sort of situation. Following retiring at the age of 27, he basically went off the face of the earth. No one knew where he was. No one saw him in the limelight for a while. And then he started to come back into Portuguese TV, a number of roles, culminating, as always, everyone does, appearing on the Portuguese version of Strictly Come Dancing, where he basically was the host. So he sort of was the Bruce Forsyth of Dança Comigo no Gelo. I probably pronounced that completely wrong. And obviously the popularity of that show, in the same way it's popular in the UK, means that he's still somewhat in the limelight in Portugal in terms of being seen in a famous capacity. But obviously he doesn't have to touch training every day, and that's the way, the sad thing about it. And that's the curious tale of Dani. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you have a lovely Father's Day for all those fathers out there. And if you're not, have a lovely day anyway. And we'll be back for another one. If you've got any suggestions, let me know in the comments who you'd like me to do next. We've got another couple lined up, but always looking forward for some more ones so we can keep this going, because everyone seems to be enjoying this series. So, and I enjoy doing it. I enjoy going through all the research and finding it and putting all the pictures together and stuff. But anyway, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Wash those hands. Get those jab appointments when you get your jabs, when you get your notifications from the NHS and whatnot. Come on, you irons, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Take care, everyone. Much